Hello, everyone, and welcome to this event. This is going to be a lively interview of beloved Toronto icon Patricia Wilson and her editor, collaborator, and friend, David Bateman. Hugo Rempel, also a longtime friend, will lead the interview, and I know you're going to enjoy this free-flowing and honest discussion. Our program today is one of many of Toronto Public Library's Pride Month celebration programs. My name is Laura Ariza, and I'm the host of this program. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Toronto Public Library is situated on Indigenous land and dish with one spoon territory. This is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. Toronto Public Library gratefully acknowledges these Indigenous nations for their guardianship of this land. Patricia Wilson's poetry and prose has appeared in a variety of journals, as well as the acclaimed anthology Geeks, Misfits, and Outlaws. She has been an arts organizer and bar manager at Buddies and Bad Time Theatre for the past 25 years. As guitarist for the band Crack Puppy, her work has been featured in Punk Globe and her most recent publications, Musing from the Bunker, Slouching Towards Womanhood, and Transmeditations, are available at Glad Day Bookstore, and you'll be very pleased to know also at Toronto Public Library. And Patricia is also a very prolific Facebook poster of updates from her bunker in the village. Dr. David Bateman is a poet and performance artist who has presented his work internationally over the past 30 years and has taught creative writing and literature at various universities across Canada. He has 4 collections of poetry and a collection of short stories and creative nonfiction. His first novel, Dr. Sad, will be published by the University of Calgary Press, and that will be in the fall of this year. Our interviewer, Hugo Rempel, is a decades-long village resident and works as a music industry and cultural event production professional in our community and across Canada. Hugo is happily married and living within the comforting view of Patricia's bunker in the sky. I'd like to thank each of you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Uh-oh, I see us.
Yes, we're here. We're just waiting for Hugo. I'm sure he'll be here any minute.
Somehow, there I am.
Oh,
Yeah.
Here he comes. There he
Somehow,
is.
There you go.
me. But thank you very much, Laura. Lovely introduction describing both of my friends. It's great to be here sitting and talking with both of them. It feels like we're in the same room slightly. More books.
We are.
Well, we are, but and both of you have a great library behind you. I find it interesting that we're all in great proximity. You know, Wellesley Street. Are you on Dundonald?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm on.
I'm staying there. Yeah.
This is a very in the village, live from the village kind of a vibe.
It's a queer triangle.
Yes, a gay triangle, a queer
Yeah,
triangle.
well, it's many
Hugo?
different triangles all in one.
Yeah.
So one of your jobs today is if I slip into disarray, please take it back to where I'm not in disarray.
Yeah, you know, it's in my experience with you, you know, the areas of disarray have always been the most pleasurable and most informative.
Yes.
So we might let it go a little far that way, but as you wish, we'll reel it back in.
If there was no disarray, we would not have these 2 books. So we don't want to lose it all.
That also goes if, you know, my arm falls off or something, let me know, right?
Oh,
That
yeah,
kind
we'll
of
notice.
disarray too. Yeah.
Let's say that for everybody. If any body parts fall, we'll talk about that.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff we want to cover today, and you know, this could be a weekly series just talking about the stuff you guys have done and accomplished. We want to go
And
back.
it will be.
Yeah. Oh, a weekly series? I hope so.
I'm sure someone's going to pick us up after this. Yeah.
do we want to just talk a little bit more about what Laura touched on briefly, like work you've done before these two books, before you collaborated in any way? And David, maybe we'll just start with you. And do you want to maybe just talk a little bit about some of your previous works? And I didn't know that there was a new book coming.
Yeah, I'm just finishing I just sent the final proof to Calgary. I did my PhD in creative writing in Calgary almost 20 years ago, and I taught for a while in the West and came back, and this was a really pleasant surprise. I got a Chalmers Fellowship about 8 to 9 years ago, and was able to work on the first draft of a novel for a year. And it's a semi-autobiographical novel based on my time teaching in Kamloops. So it was, yeah, Kamloops, which the indigenous name, I mentioned the indigenous name, of course, because it happens throughout the novel where I talk about language and how we need to reshape the language to honor original names. So yeah. Kamloops is to Kamloops, and it takes most of the novel takes place there. So it's a really nice sort of movement from when I taught there to getting the book published by University of Calgary Press, and the novel being about those places. And it's being edited by Aretha Van Herk, who is a fairly well-known Canadian. So that's what my most recent work. I know Patricia largely because of the performance work I've done over more than 30 years at Buddies.
At Buddies.
Most of that work started at Buddies, and then I did versions of that in various cities in Canada, a little bit in the US, and a bit in, well, of all places, of the island of Cyprus. I had a connection there and have done a lot of performance there.
Wow.
So I started in poetry and performance monologues, so prose and a full-length novel are fairly new. But so that's basically.
May I ask, what was your first book that was published?
The first book was a full-length performance monologue, loosely inspired by the work of Spalding Gray, because I had seen him live twice and was very aware of his work.
Yeah.
And it was published by a small press in my hometown of Peterborough. And that was I think that was the early 90s. And it's about and I performed that monologue at Buddies and various Buddies when it was on George Street. And that monologue is called "What Dreadful Things to Say About Someone Who Has Just Paid for My Lunch." And it was a long monologue with costume-based semi-drag throughout. And that was the first. It was kind of a chapbook-sized publication.
And that was in the 90s, you said?
That was in the early 90s. It was a small press called Ordinary Press out of Peterborough that was run by a professor at Trent University. He'd seen the performance and he wanted to publish it. And he's had me back once a year for several years to perform parts of that for the performance classes at Trent University.
Yeah.
So so performance was the first publication. Then it became more poetry when I got to Calgary.
Yeah.
And now the novel is like the University of Calgary.
And that novel again is going to come out in October, you said?
November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Patricia, your experience with Buddies is, really deep, and it's a whole extension of you as well. Do you also remember working with David? Were you a part of that when he was?
I may have been the publicist the first time I saw him. I think I would have been Buddy's publicist, I think, the first time that I saw and met and hung out in his afterglow.
Yeah, and at that time you were running Buddies, and still are.
It's called a hangover, not an afterglow. Anyway. Yeah.
At that time, I was what?
You were running Buddies, and
I don't know if I ever ran Buddies, but yeah.
Maybe run away from Buddies.
I was a publicist. I started out there on George Street before where they are now, on Alexander, and I was a short time publicist at 12 Alexander, and then moved into the bar.
Yeah.
And I've seen David many times at the bar.
At the bar.
Performing.
And on the stage. I moved from the stage to the bar.
Yeah.
That seems to be a natural progression for a lot of people that I've come across. So well done.
Yeah, it's the only route to follow.
Did your friendship start in the bar? Was it that kind of a thing that you two met, like as a customer and a bartender?
Yeah, I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be it. We had definitely, start out as drinking buddies and mutual admiration society at that point. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about Patricia. Just like maybe you want to touch on some of your previous work before this. You've recorded with Crack Puppy. You've been, in many articles. Do you have a favorite from the past that stands out as something that when you first saw yourself published, that was an exciting moment for you?
I think I wrote articles for Extra, for Fab, and for a few other things. But when the Geeks and what was that thing called?
It was Geeks something and Misfits. I forget the middle word. Oh, Geeks, Outlaws, and Misfits.
Yeah, that works. Yeah,
and it was edited. It was by Zoe Whittle, who was a Canadian novelist.
Whittle definitely asked me to participate, and I think I really enjoyed that the most because my story was a little bit. It was a totally true story. I found a vagina sitting on the stairs coming home from a Crack Puppy show, and it was just sitting there smoking a cigarette. So the fact that this story made it into the book, and I felt really good about telling a true story, finding that vagina smoking a cigarette on the stairs after a Crack Puppy show, and I really enjoyed seeing that in print.
You have to read the full story. You need to read the full story to understand the full impact of a vagina.
I always say, this is a regular occurrence talking with Patricia. You'll say something and I'll end up being speechless. It's a horrible position to be in when you're an interviewer, because again, that's another hour-long interview just about that. So, okay. Maybe we can now move ahead and talk a little bit about musings. Or let's talk about transmeditations first, because you both worked on that. You both wrote for that. And that,
Before I forget, though, that's great. I think before I forget, I just want to say musings. The whole thing from musings to transmeditations, and we need to mention that R.M. Vaughan, a prominent arts journalist, novelist, and poet in Canada, he now lives in Montreal, and he's also the writer in residence at University of New Brunswick in Fredericton. Yeah. He told Patricia went to him, and he recommended me. So he really was the catalyst for our collaboration.
Which I'm very
musings and the poetry. Yeah.
Okay, so it didn't happen organically from you two meeting at the bar and hanging out and talking. Your RW, your friend, actually said.
I don't know. We really never talked a lot about the writing process until R.M. Vaughan suggested me. He knew I was here. He was traveling a lot, and it worked out really well. No, we hadn't. I don't think we'd ever really. We talked about perhaps co-productions, because I've done performances with Helen, Patricia's partner, but we'd never really talked about the writing until he came in.
Yeah, I guess you've done. Yeah, you had performed with my old lady. I mean, my girlfriend, my whatever the hell. My partner,
Helen.
Partner of 29 years.
Yeah.
I've been with.
Well, I had. She had.
Years.
Yeah.
So, but not with me. And what happened was, once we started musings, it was hard work. It's hard work writing a book. It's just really hard. And David did a really good job easing the pain of it. But I just got right in the middle of it, a little bit bored and distracted. So I asked David if we could write a book together, a poetry book. And
I was horrified.
Why would that be a horrific?
Well, I wasn't. I love the process, and I love that we did it.
Yeah.
But I also saw it, and maybe I was wrong, but I saw it as a diversion. And I thought Patricia was bored, and I thought, we don't want. Okay, I'll do it if it'll keep you writing. But I felt like it was going to replace musings, which I didn't want that to happen. So I did it, Patricia, to humor you, and we got a whole book out of it.
I know.
But I also wanted to keep you on track because that's the job of an editor, to keep you on track with the writing and the organization
And
of
he did a-
the other book.
Yeah, and he did a wonderful job. And the what's the name? Migration.
Transmeditation
book.
Well, sometimes you like to call it transmigration, but I always correct you.
Yeah. I have many names for many things. So
yeah.
I would send him a poem in the beginning of the day or during the day, and then he would answer the poem and picking up on the theme of that poem. And we went back and forth just about every day, didn't we, David?
Yeah, almost every day. Yep.
Yep. So we wrote back and forth to each other with the writings.
So I read an interview with R.M. Vaughan, and in it, when he spoke with you, it said that you wanted it to be a dance back and forth with poetry.
Yes. One of the original titles that Patricia came up with was This Waltz with Words, which was the title of a chapbook version of it. But for me, the format is loosely based on there's the book. Is loosely based on Japanese forms like renga and haiku. Although we don't actually use the forms of renga and haiku, there is a seed of that kind of response where you write a poem and then someone picks up on the ideas in the last few lines of the poetry, and that's what we did.
Yeah, and
I love doing it. I had no problem. I was just afraid that we weren't going to get the other work done. That's all. But we did.
I assume the audience watching this are both readers and writers, and it's very interesting that you were in the middle of a big book project, and Patricia said pause, and you went on to another one. Was that ultimately just is that a pro tip for people writing? Like if you're stuck, take a break, do something else creative, and go back in, or was this just? It luckily worked this one time.
Well, no, that's a good point. I think it could very well be a good. I do that when I was writing the first draft of the novel. I spent several weeks really fed up with what I had, so I went on to something else, and then realized, well, that was and then went back to something. I think it can be a really good strategy.
David's a wonderful, prolific painter, so I am not. So when he gets into something like maybe even a writer's block, or as he said. He got tired of that. He paints.
He paints.
This is one of David's paintings. Can you see it?
I can see it. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I throw paint at the canvas to get my frustrations in between writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So he does that. So whereas I don't know, I play guitar and try and write other stuff. So I think you're right that it's a good idea.
And it really worked. And then once you were done that, were you able to just jump right back in to the book?
We didn't actually take a complete break. We didn't stop the other. We were doing both at the same time. I was still, because part of the process was me compiling the work from Facebook, getting Patricia to write new work, taking some of the older work, the prose and poetry. So we were doing it all together. So it wasn't a full break from it. It was kind of like I say, a diversion. We went there too, and in order to keep ourselves interested in both projects.
Yeah,
I love musings, but I really love poetry. And David's poetry is amazing, but I love poetry as an art.
Yeah.
For me to be able to write it with David was a real steal for me.
It was great fun. I mean, it was a great idea that you came up with. I was just a little hesitant at first.
How fast did the process happen? Like when I pick the book up, as I do it, I just open it up and I'll read something. It'll inspire me, but then I'll get the echo or the response from the other person. How long did that take? Was it like days in between each poem, or were you sort of banging it out with like it just was happened?
Well, it varied. Sometimes we were like day after day, right after the other, but there's about 70 pages. I would say those 70 pages probably happened in about between 70 to 100 days, because there were some times when it would be a few days. So I'd say it was so it was a few months back and forth, one poem every day, with some days we'd take a couple days before the new poem would come.
How did you know it was finished?
How did we know when it? Oh, that's a good question. Do you remember?
It was finished when I ran out of Cremant in the fridge.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, there was a process afterwards where I looked at everything we had and made some editing suggestions. We didn't really rearrange it, but yeah, I think we went to the fridge and decided, yeah, we're done.
And then that was done, and then you were able to sort of like be refreshed, or felt like you were at a new level and you could go back and David would look through and edit the Facebook posts and Patricia continued writing.
He was every single person that has bought the book, and thank God there's been many. We've done all right for, has all, and if I've talked to them, they've always commented on the editor.
Yeah.
Because Facebook and journal entries, they're both, can be totally boring.
Yeah.
And that's me watching my language. I had a blip. And
thank you.
That's good.
So they always speak of the editing and how important the editing in the journaling was, because it made it flow and it made it feel real to the person reading them. So David, when you were editing it, did you edit it I'm a friend of Patricia's on Facebook and I read these daily, for years, and there's this whole thing, and I realized the enormity of the post because it's a daily post. How did you go about looking at all those posts, and were you looking at it for the ones that interested you, or did you have an audience in mind and you said I'm going to collect? How?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of both. As an editor, it's hard to be completely subjective, but you want to try to retain, have as much subjectivity as possible. So you're trying, even though obviously I see posts that appeal to me, interesting posts, but I wanted to, because reading stuff on Facebook daily, which is what we all do who love Patricia's posts.
Yeah.
It's a real jump to try to imagine that on the page and wonder how it will work. So basically what I did was I tried to pick a variety of posts around the length and around the tone and around the information about Patricia's life and her daily practice in the bunker. And because there's a sort of subtitle, Slouching Towards Womanhood, is a very direct commentary on being trans.
Yes.
And it's a reference to a wonderful poet that we both love, to Yeats, as well as Joan Didion, Slouching Toward Bethlehem, which is a kind of intertextual response to both of their work. And we both love both of their work. And there is the excerpt from the Yeats poem with Slouching Toward Bethlehem is in the book.
Yeah.
So it was a balancing act, but again, to go back to your point about or the organic nature of the process, that was probably for me the most organic, because it went over a few years, it came out in various forms, in chapbooks and readings. So I had that time to look at it in the final period when we finally decided that we had publishers interested, but publishing, it takes a long time. So we ultimately decided to go through self-publishing, which is a very good, I think it's a really valid enterprise these days.
Yeah. And
so that was the process where I did the deciding around the 3 different sections of the book. Yeah.
Right.
And about self-publicizing, all of a sudden, I even said this to David. I remember when I was in little baby bands and we would record on cassette and pass the cassettes around, and that was our album. We lost Hugo.
No,
he's there.
Okay.
I can still see him.
Okay.
I can't.
You go ahead, Patricia. Yeah.
But anyways, it's the same as cassette tapes in the 70s or the 80s when we could make our own tapes. So I felt it was a very kind of punk-like Joe Strummer thing to do, to just publish the damn thing. I mean, I'm not afraid to say, at that point I would have been 63, maybe. I don't have that much time. I got to get that stuff out there.
You've only got 40 years left, 50 years left. So you better speed it up.
Yeah.
There are rumors that Patricia's immortal. So I don't know. There could be a lot coming out.
I'd say half a century tops.
What, Patricia and David, were you conscious of writing the Facebook post knowing that it was going to be published into a book at some point, or was it all done and then David went?
Yeah, most of the posts are older posts. There are some newer ones, so that was part of the really detailed part of the balancing act, where I would try to make them consecutive, but I also wanted to do more recent ones. So no, not so much. I weren't thinking about them as they were being written. I was looking at older ones and trying to get some kind of, and then finally it was a last minute decision. If you notice, the book is 3 parts: the posts, the prose and poetry, and they go, the first part goes consecutive chronologically, the third part goes backwards. So that was an interesting sort of structural detail. I because of the way they, sounds weird, but the way they cut and paste into the manuscript, I thought, oh, that would work to have them go in reverse at the end of the book.
That's beautiful. It's a physical thing that happens too. It's not just reading because you're going front to back and back to front. And your editing, the one thing that always strikes me about it is how, like you were saying, there are long posts and detailed posts and passionate posts. And then there's a post like on January 2nd, sipping a double Jack Daniels mixed with a touch of soda and topped up with champagne, the end. And those are the ones
which is right on the cover of the book. There's the Jack Daniels. There you go.
And I told Patricia about that yesterday. I don't know who took the picture. It's my favorite picture, and it really sums up.
Well, didn't you take it, Patricia? Did you take that picture?
Yes, I did, because Jack Daniels is like family to me. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be in my, what do they call those damn things?
But it's very faint, but you can also see that on the glass there's a skeleton, which is...
I can see it, yeah. You can see there's
another family member, of course.
Yeah, skulls are a big part of Patricia's world. Oddly, there's not one behind you right now, but
there's one on your shirt, though. You've got one on her t-shirt, on her tank top.
Do I? Oh, yes.
Skull, and probably rings too.
There it is. Yeah. Okay.
How? Oops. Let's talk some more about musings. When you share, what is the effect, Patricia, of sharing intimate details of your life? The way we do it on Facebook, we think it's our group of friends and we're talking to our friends. And then suddenly what's an intimate thing with our friends is now published and open that way. How do you feel about being that open and having it?
Well, I mean, I was fully aware of the internet and that it's forever and how far reaching when I was writing. I made a promise, if I was going to write and journal out into the public, it was going to be honest and as uplifting as possible. And even if I'm telling the truth, I try and find something uplifting about it. And because God knows we can find enough, there's that check of dirty words again. We can find enough stuff that can bring us down. As an example, look at what we're in right now. There is so much we could write about how destructive it is to everything. But I sent a friend of mine a birthday wish. And I just said, what a time to have a birthday, because you have so much material to grow from this birthday on. Something that hopefully will never happen again or hasn't happened before. So it's a very special birthday to be able to have that there.
Yeah.
I went off topic. Sorry about that.
That's what we're supposed to do.
Your posts now are, I mean, especially in this time, your posts are still very uplifting.
They're very uplifting. You always end with, not always, but it's always peace, love, think about something and here's some, it's always a little bit of love. And in this time, where we're living right now in the village, it's, pretty crazy around here. And there's all sorts of feelings. And when you get to read simple gestures, like, here's some love, it changes the day.
Well, yeah. And a very dear friend and colleague of Patricia's, Drew Rossum, in one of his reviews pointed out that Patricia is one of the few people who can get away with saying something like peace, love at the end. So there's something about the way Patricia writes that allows for that kind of positivity. In another writer's hands, it would sound cheesy.
Yep.
It doesn't sound like that when Patricia does it because of the quality of the writing.
Say peace and love, mean it, you know, and it always feels like that. David, do you keep a journal as well outside of, like, does this?
I don't. Yeah, no, I don't. I not strict. I have in the past, but not to the extent that the musings and Patricia's Facebook post. I have old ones. I've been going through a lot of things lately. That's what we do in a pandemic, right? We go through our whole lives. We've been through all these papers, and I found some, but I would say that partly because all the work I've done over the last 30 or more years has been a kind of journaling. It's all been loosely autobiographical. Some of it's been strictly autobiographical. So I do that, but it's more in my poetry and performance than a journal structure. I wish I had done that. I sometimes think, why didn't I do that every day? But I didn't.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it in a different way, I guess.
Yeah. And Patricia, obviously you do keep a journal as well as the Facebook, and it was pulled from both for the book. Yeah.
Right.
It's funny how, it's not funny, but it's interesting how right now when we're, you know, have so much going on, you two touched on poems that touched on subjects, you know, a long time ago that are extremely relevant now. And David, your poem Sob, where it sort of, you know, talks a bit about homelessness, and, you know, we're seeing that in the village right now. And that was how long ago when you did Sob? Like,
well, that was a very recent, that was based on an experience walking on the sidewalk in front of Shoppers Drug Mart on Yonge Street, and the homeless person had a dog, and it was all around that idea of giving, and why are we giving, and how do we give in a humane and unintrusive way, without so and now, you know, it's even more difficult for people on the street. It's always incredibly difficult, so we do what we can. But it's not,
I like to think of, I usually always ask the people that are underfunded on the street, I always ask them if they're taking donations before I give them money. That's the best way to, maybe, because we all deserve dignity on some level.
Yeah. And
by asking them if they're taking donations, and they usually say yes, there's a little element of dignity that you're giving them by asking if they're taking donations.
Yeah. Lovely.
And and in trans meditations, when I talk about that, it's about how do we address the situation without being judgmental, intrusive, just giving that person their own agency around what they need at that moment, and giving what we can.
Very much so. That poem felt like a Patricia Peace and Love. You know, it has that same impact and sentiment when you read it. It feels like you're saying peace and love. And not only that, like we have a lot of, you know, issues going on with police violence, you know, all over the world right now, and confronting it and dealing with it. But also, Patricia, your poem, The Door, you know, that you wrote about your own experience, you know, with the police. Want to maybe touch on that a little bit, how times have changed, times haven't changed?
Well, I think it's so they were looking for information. A friend of mine had been killed, shot in a drug deal, and this is not in Toronto, and the police were following up with an address in his pocket, and so they came upon us looking for information and drugs, and they didn't look in the egg carton in the fridge. So they
which was full of eggs.
Yeah, exactly. And they ripped the place up and were very threatening.
Yeah.
But I mean, things continue and things change, right? I mean, now there wasn't that much awareness. There was awareness just before that, you know, in the peace, love, dope, you know, San Francisco fake love thing. That everybody said, oh, you know, police, you know, brutality and stuff. And then it kind of dropped off. But now an awareness creates change. And this is really a lot of awareness. And now everybody has to look at everything they do, which is the point of self-awareness, isn't it? Whatever.
Self-aware. Yeah. I find that it's an exceptional poem, The Door, and it's well worth a read now. When I go back and read what you guys have written in the past, and they affect, they're so true today. They really ring true, and especially that one, and David's poems about walking around the neighborhood. Like we're people who walk around our neighborhood in Church Wellesley here. We're out on the streets experiencing it. We've seen 3 decades of church in Wellesley, kind of, right?
Yeah, I've lived in the same co-op for 25 years. I was away a lot, but the thing is, for me, it feels less safe. It has felt more unsafe in the last 5 to 7 years than it ever did, for a variety of complicated reasons.
Yeah.
And I don't have incidents on a daily basis, but I have a fairly high number of incidents where people are verbally abusive and threatening on the street just because I present as queer. That's what people see. Without even interacting with me, they just look and they decide sometimes that gives them the license to say something homophobic. I've always had to be careful.
Yeah. And how about Patricia, for you now?
I get the occasional, name called, not too much. I don't really, I don't know if they know what they're dealing with when they're yelling at me. So, but it's a dangerous place right now. I mean, it's like Cawthra Park is like Altmont concert, the 1969 concert of the Rolling Stones. If anybody doesn't know, if you're too young, God bless you for being too young, but look it up.
Look it up.
It's where a Rolling Stone concert in Almont, California went bad and people died. And that's what, it was just complete chaos. And that's what Cawthra Park is right now. It's like that concert to me. You don't know what you're going to get, and you don't know who is in charge that day.
Yeah.
So it's really changed a lot, and this has gotten a lot worse since the pandemic, right?
Since the pandemic,
yeah. It's disconcerting for sure, and the screaming at night, I've always said that the screams of the people on wandering the street are just like Man of La Mancha, where chasing windmills, and the screamers are all chasing their own ghosts and monsters and windmills that only they can see. So they're fighting monsters and things that don't exist to our eyes but are real to them, and the screams are real.
Definitely. This is a real period where we're listening to a lot of different things, and it's great that we're listening, and that's one of the things we do listen to too, and that informs us as well if there's screams or protests or writing. David, when you were editing the book and her Facebook post, did you think of it as just a profile of Patricia, or was it somehow a profile of the community? Because there's a lot of those that.
It was clearly both.
Yeah.
But it's good that when you mentioned saying both is very important, because that is the kind of the really important performative impact of Patricia's work in the book and in the posts, and in not just the posts, but her writing about various prose and poetry, the stories, the stairs, the door, all of that. It speaks to a community, and it also comforts the community, because it allows us to see the representations of ourselves. And within any marginalized group, that is one of the basic points we have to make over and over again. We're just tired of not seeing representations of ourselves in the mainstream. That's what's happening now in the really important and very necessary stuff around Black Lives Matter, and representation around queer individuals, people of color.
Yeah.
It has, we need as many messages as possible about that. So the book was trying to do that around trans identity for the community, as well as other issues, through Patricia's life, right? Through how she has lived her life. Yeah.
And I think the most important part for me too is in the performance or the reading of both of our reading the book. What the hell's it called again? The trans
meditations.
Trans meditation. Thank you.
Yeah.
The reading of that, when David and I do that, it's a show. It's a performance piece. That poem set of poems become a performance piece, and we've done them on the stage, and we've did them at Guelph University a couple times.
Wow.
And it is very, very potent for me to read those with David, and the feedback we got seems to be true too. And I mean, I'm there's that check of the dirty word again. I'm a guitar player, and I love to perform. I love the stage. David's a very well-known actor and performer, so we both love the performance of what we do. That is half of it for me. For me to be able to read with David and have that, it's heaven.
One of the last times I saw you both was at a bar on the Danforth, and you were doing a reading there, and it was so casual. You know, you both just sat at a table, pulled the books out, and started going back and forth. And it was a performance art piece, but it was just the two of you as we were. So it's funny to hear that it might have been a little bit of a performance, because really it's so personal. It's just you two talking. You had that room, you know, in the palm of your hand, and it's these books. Yeah, you know, it's a wonderful thing to read these books, but if anyone out there can ever go see these two perform it or read it live, it's a real plus. Yeah, like you did it at Glad Day, you've done it at Buddies readings.
We did it. Guy Gilbert invited us to do it for his queer performance class at Guelph. But the structure of the poetry, the actual structure of the poetry is kind of, I would call it, it's close to a kind of spoken word. It's not traditional prose or imagistic poetry, although there are elements of that. So it lends itself to performance. And Patricia has a really wonderful way of repartee in between poems. So that adds, and we've both performed in cabaret spaces like Tallulah's at Buddies many times. So that all of those elements help it to become performance.
Yeah, when we did, the name of the bar was the Old Nick.
Yeah. The Old Nick.
On the Danforth. Yeah, that was wonderful. And that was a great, we just had a great audience.
A great audience. And you were there. And your husband, Corser, was there. So it was like,
and you know, we came knowing you, but it was the people who were there just previously that were able to listen to this, and you had a crowd after around. It's so wonderful to see that. Hey, we're getting close to nearing the end, and I'd love to also talk about, like, while we've been here in the village and you know, bunkering down, we've been reading and doing different things, and I'm sure people watching this would love to know what kind of books you guys have been reading to pass the time and to, you know, be inspired by. Patricia?
I'm a big Patti Smith person. Right? I have, and I also, which you can get at the library with a subscription, and I can't remember the name of the subscription, but during this pandemic, I can't always concentrate to read as much as I normally do. So I have talking books. I have all of Patti Smith's stuff in talking books, and I can listen to it and do things. And I always read Howl, because you know there's always something in Howl, and you can't go wrong with, you know, Blake. I got a hell of a lot of books that I never read them right through. It's a page here, a page there, and I do the dishes to the talking books. I'm listening to Just Kids right now by Patti Smith. Yeah,
and you're also reading. You showed me before, you had a children's book that looked really great.
Oh yeah, I like really well written children's books.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Oh well. Okay. So this one is a children's picture book.
Yeah.
And it's Muddy Waters. It's a
Fantastic.
Muddy Waters.
So good.
And
Yeah.
it's a wonderful, it's a wonderful picture book. And it tells the story of Muddy Waters from the day he was born, as a farm boy, all the way to the point where he becomes Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
And there's another one that I can't see here right now, but this one, and I'll just there you go.
Uh-oh.
So this one is this poem, Heels Fish. It's a wonderful children's book.
Yeah.
And if you can't read children's book and enjoy them, then you're doing something wrong with your life.
Boy, I hope this all leads to you writing a children's book next.
Yes.
Oh dear. Well,
Illustrated by David.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. See, but yes, I enjoy children's books tremendously.
And bios. You're a big fan of biographies, and I love how when you just said you just jump from bit to bit, pull books out. That's how I read both your books. I never sat front to back. They were just pick up and read.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
Queer
by William Burroughs.
We all got Queer by everyone.
Oh, I've got.
This is.
I've got the ebook. Sorry, I've got.
Okay, but
I just read Queer. I ordered. Where's mine? There it is. I got.
We all have it.
Oh, you can't see it. It's on my tablet.
There's 3 Queers on the board.
But
so we all have it. I just reread it recently.
And there's like poetry by Sarton and her journal, and
Joan Reedy is another favorite of yours, right? The whole that one that's
there it is. Yeah,
ties into yours. Yeah.
Yeah, and Albert Camus there in New York. This is a very interesting book. He was famous. Yeah, he was famous in Paris at the point he went to New York, but not famous in New York. So he had a little bit of it's interesting. It's an interesting little book to see how he was treated in the U.S. after going from huge fame in Paris. And I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. There's Bukowski. You live by Bukowski, and this is a great book for the pandemic.
The Last Night of the Earth poems. Yes. Recommendations like that. That's.
Yeah. That is amazing. Right.
Yeah.
So
David, how about you? Your book recommendations that you've been enjoying and you'd share with the.
Well, I've been reading Larry Kramer, of course, a famous queer artist and activist who just passed away. Oh, I'm reading that right now. There he is over in the Yeah, I'm just rereading that now, which is it's a really interesting representation, pre-AIDS, but it kind of almost predicted a period.
Yeah,
his politics were very problematic and conflicted, but he did amazing work.
But you've read it previously, and now you're rereading it.
Yeah, it was so long ago, so I'm reading that right now. I read Susan Swan's at the very early period of isolation. I read Susan Swan's Dead Celebrities Club, which is a fun, interesting book, and it's very critical of banking and all of the systems of banking and hedge funds. And but last summer, and it's informed everything I've read. Last summer I spent the whole summer reading this giant book. It's called Trapdoor. Transcultural Production and the Politics of Visibility. It's a really great compilation of all kinds of work about trans identity, and I think it's important on this platform in particular, the library, to say we need. There was a problem with trans identity, and the stuff that Megan Murphy was saying, and that was a huge outcry. And so I think it's a really important moment to say we need other messages apart from what I consider her very hateful and essentialist messages about trans identity. And these are the books to read to understand trans identity in a very broad and important way that unfortunately some of the writers today aren't seeing.
Yeah.
So I read that. I just read White Fragility, which is another really important book to be reading right now, to learn about our own complicity around racist systemic problems. So I have quite a variety the last thing that I'm taking forever to read, I don't know if you've heard of this book. It's 1,000 pages. It's called Ducks, Newburyport, and it's basically one long sentence. It's kind of like, people compare it to Ulysses.
Wow.
But it's basically an Ohio housewife preparing food and just everything that pops in this kind of stream of consciousness. It was shortlisted for the Booker, and it was published by Biblioasis, which is a Windsor small press. So it's a great Canadian. She's American by birth. She lives in Scotland, and she had a small Canadian publisher. So I tend to read many different things, focus on one, and I'm looking at a variety of things. All the time.
Do you get your books locally at Glad Day specifically, or do you order from Amazon, or do you go to the library and actually take them out?
I do all of those things. I'm not going to the library as much now, but I live close to, as I said to Laura earlier, I live close to a lot of smaller, like the St. Lawrence Library, the City Hall. I often go to the Toronto the Reference Library, because it's just such a great resource and a really great building just to be in if you're doing research.
Great building. So
you can't really take many books out there, right? Because it's a.
But it's a great place to be in.
I've seen great readings at the Reference Library. And, I really like the Reference Library. It's close to our triangle here.
It sure is, and it's gorgeous on the inside. Is there? I'm pretty sure this is going to get close to finishing up, but how about one book in common between the two of you? Is there a favorite, like that was like when you both said, yeah, that's my favorite, or we both?
Probably, I would say that for me, that comes from Patricia's recommendations, and I'd sort of go between people like, because Patricia often shares poetry with me, and has bought me a couple of books like Patti Smith's The Year of the Monkey and a May Sarton book. So we often connect through the poetry.
Yeah.
And she often introduces that. I'm aware of them, but not as, and she helps me to go back to those. And some of that work is so beautiful. May Sarton and Patti Smith in particular, to look at their work and reread the poetry.
It's one of the wonderful things when you read your book, that you are inspired to go on and read like-minded writings in that way. It's such a breath of fresh air to read.
There's one other book. There's one other book I just want to mention quickly that was controversial recently. It was released early on ebook. It's called Songs for the End of the World by Salima Nawaz, and it's uncannily predicted exactly what we're going through. And I read it right away as an ebook, and it's really uplifting. It's very sad, but an uplifting view of. And she wrote this over 7 or 8 years, and some of the research she did it's uncanny how close it is to the pandemic that we're in right now. So and she won the Journey Prize for one of her early books, and she's a really wonderful new Canadian writer. So Songs for the End of the World is a difficult book because it's about what we're going through now, but it's also very uplifting.
Yeah. And I would say the same, about a lot of the poems in there. Some of them are difficult, but they're ultimately uplifting in your books, which is a really great thing. I think that's about time for us. Yeah. That's an hour of us talking.
Thank you, Hugo and David and Laura and the library, and thank you for all this. It was great.
David,
thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Yeah,
and your books are both available at the library, and they're available on Amazon and at Glad Day and other small shops around as well, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so definitely worth checking out. I hope that we get to speak again during this pandemic times, because it's a great catch-up, or just follow Patricia or David on Facebook is another great thing. It's like a book in the making. I think
I hope
we can share a bottle of Cremant soon.
So do I.
I also like reading. I also like reading the labels to expensive gin. So that's another great idea.
Oh my God! I think we have to put together a list of things you like to read, labels and books, and get that out. Laura, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for watching. It was really informative, and thank you.
I want to thank you so much. I really have enjoyed this so much. When the program started, I promised everyone a a free-flowing and honest discussion, and you certainly delivered. It was really wonderful to hear from all three of you. You know, it's so interesting that your friendship is so supportive, and that is just so uplifting to see itself. But thank you. Thank you to Hugo for being so insightful and leading the discussion along. And, you know, your honesty and compassion is just really, really inspiring. So thank you, David. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
And thank you so much to Hugo as well. I hope that all of you have enjoyed this program. I encourage you all to enjoy some of our other programs, our online programs, particularly our Pride programs that are on offer this month, and enjoy. Thanks for the shout out for all the library books too. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.